much more than Samsung, as Samsung needs the wins this round more than JINAIR does. So, looking at RorO's record, he's actually one of our top players in Pro League. He's not always in the list, depending on where the list falls, but he's 13-4, and he's 4-1 in this matchup. Only losing to Parting in a very jet-lagged map that happened on this very map, where Parting just crushed him. And you and I are the only people who thought that was going to happen. The Koreans looking at stats alone, but I'm like, listen, this guy's style of playing. I travel a lot. I'm tell you what, he's going to lose to Parting. It's going to happen.
The big thing about his stats for me is that his ratio is so good. We have other players up there, especially creators. One of them, even Zest, now at 11-11, who have a lot of wins, but they have a lot of losses as well. RorO has only 4 losses. He's played 17 games, and to have that kind of record is really, really fantastic.
Definitely shows a lot about the player, for sure. And he's been around for a while now, and he's always been doing well, especially in individual leagues, as well as in this Pro League. And yeah, his ZVZ is something special to watch.
So who would you say, actually, if I had to ask you right now, Malin, you have to answer quickly, which one of these two players is the better Zerg player overall in the world, like if you had to rate them?
RorO, for sure.
RorO, okay. I want to talk about this a lot during the early game of ZVZ if it ends up being one of those passive games.
All right.
I have a lot of opinions about this, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Let's go into game number 1, Samsung versus JINAIR. RorO up against Rogue here at the SPL.
LTA는 SK텔레콤.
Up here in the top left, in the pink for Samsung Galaxy Con, the Zerg player, he is RorO.
And down here in the bottom right, in the teal, our Zerg player, he is Rogue. So, see how these two players open up pool-wise and how they want to tackle the, you know, whether they go hatch first, what sort of follow-up they do.
This map is kind of it's a bit of a really, it is a long rush distance, so it's very rarely that you'll see like a 9 pull in this map compared to a hatch first. I feel like just about every game we usually see a hatch first, and in this match we see a lot of gases, because simply because it's so hard to block off the natural that yeah, we usually see like a lot of Zergling openings, a lot of Speedling openings, kind of into a more mid-game. Usually it ends up being Roach versus Roach, but it can variate and you can see mutas, but yeah, it is kind of easy to take a third base in this map too. It's not too far away from the natural, so it's not too hard to spread creep there, and it is pretty easy to play defensive on this map too. But we'll have to wait and see what they do.
Just getting a look at those stats in the bottom right, we saw RorO with the 2-0 lead over Rogue and Heart of the Swarm, and Samsung having a really good record on this map. I have to say most of that is due to RorO, who comes out almost all the time in this map.
Yeah, notice he's 5-1 on this map. So even though the only time he didn't play against a Protoss here, he still won. And looks like we got a... I'm like, that's spooky. You have
Whoa.
How is it that dark anywhere? Like,
Very cool. I have one too. She made me bring it. But I do like Samsung.
Now, what we've seen so far, we've seen some deviation in the build. But we saw both with 15 hatches, and we see an earlier gas for the JINAIR player, and a bit later for Samsung.
Yeah, just like about a 1 drone earlier.
Yeah,
gas.
so there's no real difference after all. I mean, they're both going to go for the Speedlings, both going to play that kind of aggressive early game. And from there, we'll have to wait and see if they're going to either choose Mutalisks or Roaches. And it's usually one or the other. Mutalisks a lot more aggressive, obviously, and kind of based around canceling the opponent's third base. Because if you get that down, and you kind of have map control of Mutalisks, you can transition into Roaches a lot easier, into Infestors and whatnot, and kind of play the game with an economic advantage.
So, going back into what we were talking about earlier, what I was asking you, why do you say RorO over Rogue? In your opinion? I feel like Rogue more right now.
I feel like, well, for sure, RorO has a lot more experience and has a lot more tournaments behind him and tournament wins. So I think that counts for a lot for sure. And he has been doing well in Pro League, and I mean Rogue has been doing very well too. But I feel like I'd still give the edge to RorO.
Okay. Okay.
That's how I feel about it.
All right.
I was really captivated by Rogue's Code A performance, and he's been doing pretty well in Pro League, so I'm really liking him right now. I think he's very... I feel like people really underestimate his skill and his talent just because he doesn't have a championship yet. He did actually fall in 4th place in his Code S group, which was a tough group with Life Classic and Hydra. But otherwise,
well, that actually says something about his ZVZ, though. Hydra and Life, both very good at ZVZ, but at the same time, like, that is saying something about where his ZVZ is at, losing to those players. And RorO is definitely up there.
Oh, yeah.
In ZVZ, so...
Yeah, I feel like RorO's ZVZ specifically is better than Rogue's, especially considering the map that we're on right now.
Yeah.
So we see...
I feel like the big thing, just to put my opinion in on this, is like sometimes, like you were saying, Wolf, you have a player who has this kind of potential to be really, really good, but he just doesn't have the results to back it up just yet, and sometimes he fails. But if you think about Code S, Code A, especially for individual leagues out here in Korea, it's always so cutthroat. It's so hard to win with so many good players. And, you know, I feel like definitely Rogue is a great player.
Oh, and we saw a huge scout from Rogue.
Yes.
Yeah, he sees these links coming across. He needs to set up a wall. Looks like he's barely going to get that drone inched in there to get that 3rd chamber going. Or not a chamber, but the Roachborn, in fact. And now he's got a Spine Core set up with the Queen Wall, I believe, is tight with that geyser there. But he still may be able to break through. It's a lot of damage with all these Zerlings coming down.
It's a lot of damage, but at the same time, this will be very hard to break through. If he gets that Queen in position, he should be okay.
Well, he gets 1 Queen, and the 2nd Queen is going to go down. A Spine, not in time. Loses that drone, and now he's actually going to play Ring Around the Hatchery here, trying to get into that main base. Nice drone blocks.
Yeah, really nice drone block here. If that got in the main base, it would be so much harder to deal with. Now some Lings out for Rogue, but still not with the speed just yet. Speed Lings of RorO go around. They get into the main base.
He got greedy. He tried to trap them in, but then he didn't have enough of a defense to actually stop them from going to the main. Is he going to snipe this Queen? I don't think he's quite able to do it with this many drones and Lings to defend. He just looks like he's going to run circles around these units. With speed not even started here, the extra gas goes into the lair right now for Rogue, but still it's going to help these Lings actually stick around and maybe do a little bit more damage.
Absolutely, and it was definitely a missed opportunity with some drone blocking there to kind of stop these Zerglings getting in, which I think was probably the biggest mistake from Rogue. But I mean, he didn't take too much economic damage. He hasn't lost too many drones. He's kind of just had to run around and micro a lot. But at the same time, we see RorO taking advantage of just taking that fast 3rd base, going into Roaches also, maybe with a bit slower of a lair, but he's definitely going to have the lead with economy for sure. Yeah. And we're going to have to wait and see if Rogue wants to kind of go into a Roach timing off this. He's obviously going to have faster speed and faster upgrades, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see if it's going to be a timing attack or he's just going to take a delayed 3rd base into kind of a more defensive style.
Well, we see more Zerglings coming out of RorO here right across the map. It seems like he wants to try to do more damage or at least stop that 3rd base for as long as possible, really push that advantage with his fast 3rd base. So again, some more aggression here right at the front.
This is very, very intelligent play. And he could actually get this Roach Warren if he wants.
Certainly, this is the big point here. If he can get the Roach Warren that is exposed, that is huge because he's not only going to stop Roach production temporarily, but will also stop Roach speed.
Yes, he has stopped Roach speed in its tracks, and that is absolutely amazing. That is a perfect move. And from here, he kind of just has to drone up and then make his own Roaches. And his Roaches are going to be ahead in speed, maybe a little behind in upgrades, but that's not a big deal at all.
Yeah. Saw a huge pump of drones there right at the RorO as you were saying that. See the speed coming up for him as well. I mean, you were talking about a little bit before the upgrades are going to be behind, but I feel like as long as he drops a 2nd Evo chamber behind this, he should be quite fine just by the the limited number of Roaches that Rogue can get out of this right now.
Exactly, and I mean the main upgrade for Roach vs Roach is attack. So as long as you get that +2 attack in good timing, you are doing just fine. But upgrades later are definitely helpful, so we'll want to see that out of RorO. But for now, he's doing just fine. I mean, he's fully saturated his 3rd base already, and he is starting Roach production with 4 hatcheries. Yeah. So he is in a perfect position to do a great timing with either +1 or +2. His choosing at this point.
Yeah, I like the situation here for RorO. He's playing this style that we see a lot of players play in this matchup, where you're just trying to be the aggressor and control the game that way by tempo, rather than just trying to sit back, more like what we see RorO doing, saying, well, I'm going to get ahead with my economy, and I'll be so good defensively that everything you try is going to work against you. But I feel like he just got just enough of an edge with this that he's going to be in a pretty good spot. Game's far from over, though. Let's see what he does with these roaches coming over here for the counterattack at the natural, the little poke at the back door, if you will.
Definitely opening up his options for run-bys later on in the game, killing this debris. And I don't know if he'll actually go for the full-on attack, but he'll certainly apply some pressure.
Well, he does have the speed right now, but I feel like his upgrades are down in terms of attack and defense. So he will back off for now.
Another really important factor in ZVZ, and especially in Roach vs. Roach, is the concaves more than anything else. Yeah. A concave can win you a fight, even if you're horribly outnumbered. So long as you got a great concave, you can definitely take a good fight and get ahead. Yeah,
and that's what RorO wants to do right now. He knows he's trying to split up his units intelligently, and he's doing that just now. He's got a decent position down here at the bottom of his ramp, but RorO splits up. Very nice concave for him right now.
Yep, good concave for him. He's trying to push his way through here. But is there enough defending roaches coming out for RorO? That's the question, because he has the defender's advantage. He's got this production. He's pumping it out, and I think he will push this back. But if RorO gets a good enough trade before he retreats, I think it'll be worth it. And I think that's what we're seeing here. He just has enough roaches to trade until he can't anymore. Then he backs away until he has a better position there up on top of the high ground. And he's just continuing to take better trades. He has right now the better worker count. He's got the better economy, and he's using that bank because he knows that he's ahead economically at this point.
Exactly, and that was some pretty unfavorable concaves for RorO, but at the same time, he kept running in roaches through past the natural debris and focused down I think it was about 5 drones. So he did a little bit of economic damage at the same time, and that natural still is under droned for now, but you know, a little bit of economic damage as well as trading roaches pretty effectively. Not the best trades, but still pretty good. Yep. Is putting him in an even better position at
While
this point.
All that was going on, RorO was upgrading the burrow and burrow movement, so he has that right now. And does RorO have any overseers here? He does. No, that's Rogue's one right there.
Yeah, he doesn't have any nearby, so he's certainly going to have to
take
it on that.
This is absolutely another way that RorO can get back into this game. This is probably the worst feeling in the world for a Zerg player, when you see roaches pop up, and he does finish an overseer, so he does see them, but he's kind of really out of position at the moment.
Yeah, there's so many of them split up in different directions. He's got his own roaches here in the main base doing some damage, and here come 3 at the natural of RorO, so a lot of roach harassment going on here. These 4 roaches do burrow and escape. I think he's going to need a lot more than one overseer to actually clean up this harassment. You can see he's now making a second one, but the drone count is actually equalizing a little bit here with this harassment of Rogue. And the roach harassment that's happening back at his home base seems to be cleaned up by now.
He did take quite a few drones out there. I mean, yeah, they're definitely a lot closer to the drone count than they were before. I was surprised we didn't see like a full-on counterattack from RorO, knowing that a lot of roaches were peeled off and kind of in harassment. But he decided to just stay defensive, and it looks like he's going to gear up for a bit of a timing later on.
Yeah, that definitely looks like what he's planning here. Yeah. Notice the bank right now for RorO is insanely high, so that means he can continue to do these trades and then remax.
Yeah, that's the big thing there. I'm glad you mentioned that, because even though these guys are both maxed out, basically similar army supplies, as one player has the better economy, he's going to just get that bank up farther and farther and be able to remax. More harass going in here is not able to get that queen. It does get the burrow on there, so we'll save that guy, or that girl, that woman.
I don't know if queens really have a gender, you know.
Well, one could assume they are female, being called queens, but
just by the name. But you know, they do inject.
We aren't sure,
they
guys.
Inject. They spawn the larva with energy. You know, no sort of weird reproductive organs. Yeah. So it's really not certain.
We see a big run by into the main.
Yeah, this is actually quite a lot of roaches.
This could do a lot of damage, and this is really putting RorO in the back foot now. He's just not prepared for these run bys, for these burrowed roaches.
Yeah, it's certainly putting his multitasking to the test.
It's definitely getting Rogue back into the game in a big way.
Notice that on the units tab, you guys can see there's a lot more larva for RorO too. Keep that in mind as well when we go into these remax situations. He's got about, you know, he had for a time about twice the larva that his opponent had. So money that he's got available to spend. Whereas, you know, even though Rogue is starting to build up a bank, if he doesn't have enough larva to actually spend that bank, that can become a problem later on, because these two haven't taken a big fight in quite some time. So of course they're both going to have a big bank. It just being able to use it is quite critical.
More burrowed roaches here at the third base of Rogue. A lot of them, in fact, and not many things to deal with this right now, as Rogue is going for a big attack here at the natural. And all the drones have burrowed here, but this third base is definitely going to go down.
Yeah, he's like, burrow your drones. I don't care. I'll kill your hatch then. Whatever you do, I'm going to get something out of this. And I actually could maybe even trade against some of those defending roaches because there were very few of them there. This looks like a 9 roach burrow buy over here will be spotted and cleaned up, so 9 free roaches.
Oh, wow, that is huge. That's a lot of free roaches. And, yeah, losing that third base like that, simply not prepared for like counter burrowed roach sort of harassment. And from here, yeah, RorO is just going to kind of spine crawler up and play even more defensive now that he's 1 base up.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a transition into Infestors or Hydras at some point soon too.
Yeah, I think
sitting in these on these banks for quite a long time now.
Yep. Rogue coming in, another counter attack before those spine crawlers are ready. It's going to actually force RorO all the way back.
Yeah, he's going, you know, he's very serious about this. He doesn't really have enough spawning roaches coming up anytime soon. It doesn't ignore the spine crawler, takes that out, so that could actually help him out a little bit later. And now splits his roaches into like 3 different groups in a tiny little area just to make it so that RorO's turned back home for as long as possible. I noticed that actually Rogue is moving across the map himself now with a large group of roaches to actually start taking some big hits, trying to catch maybe some of these units out of position. In fact, we almost saw, you guys probably saw on the mini-map, the 2 roach armies split here for RorO because of the pathing. That would have been a disaster.
Oh, he does not want to take the fight like this, though. He needs to stay on the top of that ramp, or he's just going to run into a deadly concave.
Yeah, I think he identified that. He's like, oh, no, I can't fight here.
No.
Backs up behind those spine crawlers. Once those are finished, definitely going to help out a lot as well.
Feeling very confident. Feeling very, very confident. And he can definitely take this fight, but at the same time, he's losing his 4th base.
Yep, losing that 4th base over here is very painful, but you know, it's not too big of a deal because Rogue doesn't really have his own 4th up to speak of. Really saturated and ready to go. Now here we go. He's got a better concave at the top of the ramp. RorO will not engage this. So
these 2 Zerg players are just so smart. They know exactly when to engage and when not to engage.
They're clearly masters of the map. I mean, RorO, obviously we've seen him practice a ton on this map. We've seen him play a lot on this map. But Rogue showing his skills here as well, knowing exactly how to use those concaves, use that terrain. This map actually reminds me a little bit of Moospoolheim that we saw a lot of Zerg versus Zergs on in the GSTL, where it's like if you control the ramps or you control the concaves, you're always going to take the better engagement. Harassments here looking a little bit insignificant at this point because there's usually enough units to hold, but it looks like maybe Rogue actually has too much. This time he might actually start getting some drones.
Yeah, he's taking a lot of damage. RorO has to either pull back or do something or start spawning more roaches at that location. But I'm surprised we're not seeing more spine crawlers go up for these players at their 3rd bases. I mean, it's one of the most standard ways to kind of deal with this. And at the same time, we see RorO harassing the natural again, doing a lot of damage.
Big push in here with a ton of roaches coming into the 4th base of Rogue that he was trying to set up here in the middle, and it pushes them way back. And that 4th base forfeit.
Yep, takes it out here. Hanarabi style, man, a base for a base.
I mean, at the same time, we got Rogue doing the same thing to RorO's 4th base again.
Yeah, he's going to try to kill us again. I think it will be warded off with the hit point rate of that, and especially because these roaches are on a right-click on the hatch, so they're not going to fight here. He chases RorO back now, though, with his superior roach force. When you know a big, heavy harassment force is somewhere else, that's when you know you might be able to take a fight in the middle of the map because you just have a few more roaches at that moment. Now, you know, Moonglade, in your professional Grandmaster Korea Zerg opinion, do you think with the bank that RorO has, it's reasonable for him to actually consider starting to add some Hydras in there, starting to get an infestation put out, maybe get some fungals in there?
It's kind of a tempo-based decision. I mean, at the moment, there's just so much action going on, so much harassment and counterattacking that I don't think he's really found enough time to switch into Hydras. And RorO taking a terrible engagement against Rogue, only with like a quarter of his forces.
Yeah, he really wanted that 4th base, but I guess he's just not going to have it.
No one's going to get in the 4th base this game. It's just going to be roach run-bys all day long.
This is like one of the most action-packed ZVZs I've seen here at Pro League.
It's so much aggression, but I feel like both players are kind of like skimping out on a lot of defense. They don't have to keep roaches or that many roaches at home. Ooh, and another bad engagement for RorO potentially.
Yeah, he saw that, a big glop of roaches right there in the middle for Rogue, and he just backs off, cancels that hatch right away, and Rogue wants to take a fight right away. He's waiting.
Beautiful move. Getting the concave at the bottom of the ramp means RorO can't defend his 3rd base.
He can't move out. He's stuck.
But at the same time, guys, we got a huge play there at the 3rd base of Rogue as well.
Oh, and RorO decides, you know what, I got to try to break out here. I can't just let this go. I'm losing too much. No, I can't be forced onto 2 bases. Notice, though, during this fight, which is very Rogue favored right now, he's taken another base to the bottom left. So that's something that he will be able to fall back on if he survives, because Rogue is trying to push his way through to end the game. He's killed so many harvesters here. The bank of RorO is what keeps his supply high here, but it's completely depleted now. That's all the bank he's going to have. And notice the reason why Rogue hasn't been able to remax as quickly is because of the larva issue. He has the money, but not the larva.
Yeah, he really does. This is a really even fight, though, right now. But look at the supplies. So many of those larvas being spent on a ton of roaches popping out. And look back at the base of Rogue. He has done so much damage. RorO has. He killed the third base, the second base. I was watching that on the minimap the entire time that fight was going on.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that had happened.
It was definitely an overcommittal by Rogue going up that ramp, trying to just end it like that, instead of dealing with the natural and maybe finding more bases. And he kind of threw away all his roaches to a bad concave at the top of the ramp. And at the same time, RorO took the other choice of taking down the natural and then getting out. And he did salvage a lot of his roaches, but yeah, he's definitely in an advantage too. He did have the better bank.
The +2 carapace upgrade is actually not ready for Rogue during all of this, which isn't as important, like you said, as the +2, but it does start to add up in these fights.
It definitely adds up in the big fights, in the big picture for sure, and it no doubt did some work in that in those trades.
Now, this base I was talking about over here is so important. He just didn't know about it until too late. This hatchery was kind of crazy.
I think he was like kind of preparing for like a big base trade scenario, and he's like, okay, I'll put a hatchery down near him, but kind of worthless. But I mean, he does have the one base that is mining on the map, so all he has to really do is make a perfect concave and defend.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the roach count is already in his favor, and it's just going to get better and better with the economy he has built. Like, there's nothing RorO can do to catch up. He can't secure another, or excuse me, Rogue to catch up here. There's nothing he can do to take another base. He's like trying to move spine crawlers down here to help push his way through. But I really just think RorO is going to continually deny him at this point.
Yeah, it's just going to get to a point where RorO is maxed and he's like, okay, I see clearly that your economy is gone and it's time for me to attack.
Yeah. It seems like he wants to put on the pressure here. Does he want to attack into 5 spine crawlers in a big concave? No,
yeah, that would be probably the one bad call he could make in this game. That's the only call left that could go wrong.
Yeah.
If he chooses any other angle, even if he chooses to go down from the top where the spine crawlers are not, he will win the fight for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, what does Rogue do from here? I mean, he's just going to try to sit back and defend and let the waves
I think he's just going to, like, pray that RorO won't take the fight. But RorO is going to take the fight. And it's going to be really one-sided, I think.
Spine crawlers here just way too late to the party. Don't forget that upgrade advantage that RorO had is still there. Dance burrowing here a little bit, some BM.
A bit of cheekiness. Letting those spine crawlers get up, but there's simply just not enough roaches left to buffer for them.
Yeah, and barely any economy behind it. Look at the supplies right now, up barely, well, almost by 100 right now is RorO. He's just going to push through right now. This has been so back and forth the entire time, this entire game, but RorO finally having enough roaches here to push through.
Very, very intense game, but
GG.
RorO he hanged in there, and I mean, he took a lot of damage from all these burrowed roaches, but you know, he stayed strong, he stayed multitasking, and he made better decisions in the late game, especially when they were trading bases.
Yeah. Well, that's a very, very calculated RorO game right there, showing us that in the late game he knows what decisions to make. The defense out of both players was, like you said, when it comes to static defense, perhaps a bit lacking, but otherwise, you know, they never really lost control until Rogue lost control when he was doing that big attack up the ramp, where then suddenly he just didn't have anything to defend at home, lost all of his bases, all of his drones, and that's where things really fell apart, and RorO was able to basically take the win from that moment forward.
The ideal was okay with the aggression, you know, cut him off from that third base and kill the third base, but I just don't think it was a conscious of the counterattack that was going on out of Rogue. But that's exactly the game I wanted to watch. That's the game I was most excited for. That was an amazing ZVZ we just had there.
Very refreshing to see a ZVZ like that, where it's just nothing but intense the whole game long, and no one moved on from roaches, which is kind of funny, but you know, you see it sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's just how Koreans like to play the matchup. The reason why I think Europeans go into Swimless more often is because they play a very different style of Zerg versus Zerg, and one's a little more passive, whereas Koreans are attack